Greetings, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Rootwork here on Black Liberation Media. My name is Thandisizwe Chimurenga, and today we are going to be continuing with the build and fight formula of Cooperation Jackson, in that it is an introduction to an organization, a network of organizations that Cooperation Jackson is a part of, and that's called the People's Network for Land and Liberation. But before we get into that, got to do this housekeeping. Like, share, and subscribe. Please like the show now before it finishes, and maybe you hear something you don't like and don't want to like the show. Get it out the way now. Like, share, and subscribe. Like the show now. Share the link and subscribe to Rootwork here on Black Liberation Media. Subscribe to Black Liberation Media if you have not already subscribed. And please, again, you share the link with folks who might not be subscribers to the work that Black Liberation Media does, to the work that Rootwork does here on this channel, here on this platform. So again, my name is Thandisizwe Chimurenga, and once a month for the last several months, I have been in communication, in conversation with Kali Akuno, co-founder, co-executive director of Cooperation Jackson, based in Jackson, Mississippi, around their build and fight formula, which is a program for the fundamental transformation of society. It is an experiment, conversation, an experiment, a project that we believe should be replicated. But it's not perfect. It is one project. We want to see what we can do with our own productive capacities, relying upon ourselves. Can we do this? If so, how can we do it? How can we replicate the successes? And so, again, part of a network that Cooperation Jackson is a part of is called the People's Network for Land and Liberation. So today we're going to get an introduction to that network, to that work. My guests in a pre-recorded interview are Edget Betru and David Cobb. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about themselves. And then they're going to talk about the work that the People's Network for Land and Liberation is involved in, the 5-point program that they have. And hopefully, maybe at the end of the interview, we'll have our colleague, comrade, friend, brother, Kali Akuno on to give us a couple of words as well. But without further ado, let's get into this interview now with Representatives David Cobb and Edget Betru of the People's Network for Land and Liberation. Here with me now are Edget Betru and David Cobb. Edget is co-coordinator of the People's Network for Land and Liberation, which is a network of autonomous organizations committed to building communities that regenerate the Earth's life-giving ecosystems. Edget immigrated from Ethiopia to the United States and grew up in the U.S. South, where she developed a critical understanding of how people's lives are limited by socioeconomic systems that privilege a few at the expense of the many and the planet. At an early age, she decided to dedicate her life to the transformation of those systems of oppression and of herself, and she continues that endeavor as a mother, community member, activist, attorney, nature, and wellness enthusiast. David Cobb is a people's lawyer who has sued corporate polluters, lobbied elected officials, run for political office himself, and been arrested for nonviolent civil disobedience. He believes we must provoke and win a peaceful revolution for a peaceful, just, sustainable, and cooperative society if we are to survive. David currently serves as the co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network and is on staff with the People's Network for Land and Liberation, a consortium committed to decommodify the land to reestablish a right relationship with the earth and all of our relatives and relations. Edget and David, thank you so much for being on Rootwork today.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so that was y'all's officials bio, and it briefly said what the People's Network for Land and Liberation is, but I'm coming to ask you, what is the People's Network for Land and Liberation, and why is the People's Network for Land and Liberation?
Well, I'll do the what is, and then I'll turn to Edget, and she can say the why is. The what is simple. 6 community-based organizations across the entire North American continent of Turtle Island. I'm going to start on the West Coast, Thandi. What we have is Native Roots Network in far northern California. This is a trans-tribal group. They are led by indigenous folk on both Yana territory and Pit River territory and Wintu territory. But it is trans-tribal, but all of them come out of a indigenous perspective. And so that's Native Roots Network. Then we'll move across to Idlewild, Michigan, also known as Black Eden. I hope some of your audience may be familiar with Black Eden at a time in the height of the terror of Jim Crow segregation. This was Black-owned land for camping and culture and art. It was a place in the turn of the century where people were saying this was a place for Black folk to go and be fully human and unapologetically Black. It is now being, well, I'd say, revitalized. It is returning to its former glory under the leadership of a core group of folks who share the People's Network for Land and Liberation program. We're going to continue across to Vermont, in rural Vermont, Cooperation Vermont. This is a group that is comprised mostly of poor working class white folk who are committed to the same kind of program that we're about to describe to you. We'll go down to Wellspring in Western Massachusetts, building out an ecosystem of both community land trusts and worker-owned cooperatives that are a combination of poor white folks and immigrants, mostly from Central America. Then down to Atlanta, Georgia, where Community Movement Builders, where Edget, I think, is still working. And then lastly, Cooperation Jackson in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Neo-Confederacy. And the reason I wanted to really give you the big, broad picture of where we are is to make it clear every one of these organizations is deeply rooted in their community, doing organizing work, transformational organizing work, according to the very unique circumstances, material conditions in which they're operating. But we all share a 5-point program and we apply it in different ways, but we unite around a transformational program, not merely projects, although we have awesome projects, and not merely policies, although we work on policies, but a program. We call it a transitional program that can win a new world.
Tell us about these 5 points.
So the 5-point, I'm going to break it down without dumbing it down. Number 1, land. Decommodify the land. And by that, we mean to return land to its natural state in order to be properly stewarded. So when we say land, it means land for both housing as a fundamental human right, but also for food production and distribution outside of the corporate capitalist system. So whether you call that agroecology or indigenous food sovereignty or permaculture, the point is culturally appropriate, organic, natural food is a human right. The second part, so the land is about the ability to practice what our indigenous siblings call traditional ecological knowledge, which is to return to stewardship of the land in the right way. The second point of our program is to incubate worker-owned cooperatives. But as we say, not co-ops for the sake of co-ops. We're talking about co-ops to meet material conditions, to meet objective needs. So absolutely, we are doing co-ops to make things, to provide goods and services outside of the capitalist extractive mechanism. The third part is political education, to integrate that into everything that we do. And Thandi, it's not like, did you read your Marx? But instead, to have honest conversations about surplus value versus use value, to have conversation about social reproduction and how come it is that the most important thing that any society does to reproduce itself is to bear and rear children, but in a capitalist economy that has literally no value. And isn't it worth noting that that's gendered, right? That women are expected to do that basically for free, as opposed to a fundamental aspect of what it takes to reproduce our society. What I'm getting at is we do political education according to a popular education pedagogy. We are engaging people in not just what we're doing, but why we are doing it and the vision that we have for a completely different world. The fourth program is art and culture, because what we know is that culture is everything that you do and how you do it. And for art, we say, absolutely, we should have more poetry in the movement. Absolutely, let's make things more beautiful. But it's not just beauty for the sake of beauty, although we do want things to be beautiful. But we know that art is the medium that will cut across everything. I often say, you have an actual movement on your hands when the ideas of the movement begin to express itself in poems and songs and dance and visual paintings and murals and so forth. So art for culture for us is absolutely critical, and it's a human need and a human right as surely as food and shelter is. And the fifth thing, Thandi, that I'm really excited to share, and that is community production centers using digital fabrication. Imagine Star Trek replicators. If we don't blow this planet up, if we don't poison it, in the next 20 to 30 years, we will all be living at a time of Star Trek replicators, where anything that you look at, you could imagine machines that can make the machines that can make the machines. So we are dedicated to democratizing that technology, break it down to the community level, so that we don't have to wait for a national movement to seize the means of production. We can literally create our own community means of production, right? Create the means of production, so we change the mode of production. So we change the very way labor is being organized. We democratize everything. So that's the 5-point program. And what we say, I'll end it with this. We think that is a special sauce, but it is not a secret sauce. We are sharing our recipe for everyone. And we say, in your own community, add to that recipe. If you in the deep South, make it a gumbo. Make it a juicy root. If you're in the Northeast, make it a clam chowder. But the point is, we got a recipe for winning a new world.
Thank you for that. I think that was not only succinct, but comprehensive. It almost makes me not want to ask this question, but I have to ask this question. Why now? Why is this happening now?
Well, we believe that we are in the period of what some call end stage capitalism, where capital has run out of places, new markets, run out of things to exploit and extract from. And we are witnessing, the climate literally collapse. And we witnessed during COVID how within a matter of days, people are finding that they cannot find food or medicine. And it's not necessarily because it doesn't exist, but it's because the way the capitalism is set up, if the pharmaceutical can't profit from delivering the vaccines to a particular community, they're not going to do it. And so we are in a period where it's almost, hitting people over the head, that this system is not designed to provide for your needs. It's not designed for your well-being, and it's rapidly attacking and imploding on itself and our planet. And so we have seen this process unfolding for many years and have been saying the same thing over and over. And in our little corner of the world, we've been building our organizations to provide what we can for our people, to show the way forward. And now with this network, we can exchange our best lessons, the tools that we've developed amongst each other, and hopefully we can inspire other folks, learn from other folks, and continue to experiment with each other. But now is the time, because either we are going to have developed local systems of production and exchange, a production change that can help us meet our needs and our people's needs, or we're going to starve. We're going to not have basic food, water, shelter. So that's essentially why the time is now, and it's up to us to determine what happens when this system crumbles, which is inevitable at this point.
Inevitable, but we just don't happen to have the exact date, and time. But it is inevitable. I want to go back to, thank you for that, Edget. Thank you for that. But I want to go back to something you said, David, if you don't mind. I always get concerned when I hear movement folks separate out art and culture. As this is one of the things on the list, culture, because as you said, David, culture is how we do everything, how and why we do everything. My position is that political organizing, political work is part of our culture. And culture is not necessarily something to be added on the agenda as a checklist. Fighting for liberation, fighting for a right relationship with the land, as you say, I believe that is a part of culture. So I always get slightly concerned when I hear what I think are people separating culture out. Should I be concerned, David, or?
Well, you should absolutely be concerned when you hear people separate it out. And I hope you heard me say we have a comprehensive transitional program. These are not merely policies. These are not merely projects. We do not separate them. What we are saying is we are returning to the way humans are supposed to live before enclosure, before capitalism, before the separation. It's interesting, Atandi, you were reminding me, is a great book called The Continuum Concept, where they say in many indigenous cultures, they don't even make a difference between work and play. They're just different human activities, right? And so this is the point. Art and culture is, again, culture is everything that we do and how we do it. And art is just another way that we express our humanity, as surely as preparing food and sharing it with one another is simply another way that we do it. So I appreciate you pushing on this point and pushing for the clarity, because for us, we know that humans are supposed to be living differently. We are supposed to be in right relationship with each other. We have a role to play on Mother Earth and under Father Sky. We are supposed to be in a reciprocal relationship, a dance with all of life, and we're supposed to have magic infused in everything that we do. So should you be concerned? Anytime anybody tries to separate art and culture, we ought to be having that conversation. And I hope you hear us at the People's Network for Land and Liberation embrace that concern and share with you how we're thinking about it.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you for that.
We separate it out and make sure to include it as one of the 5 tenets because it's so integral and important, and we don't want it to be overlooked, and we don't want to be folks who are just talking about these things without doing them in a way that reflects the cultures that we come from.
Okay. Now, David, you are a co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. I'm familiar with Cooperation Jackson and its work around solidarity economy in Jackson, Mississippi. Of course, they're a member of the People's Network for Land and Liberation. You've talked about the fact that part of the plans of not only PNLL, but the organizations, the autonomous organizations in the network. It's not cooperatives for cooperative sake. Why, or should I say, what is the relationship of a people's network for land and liberation to a solidarity economy?
That's a great question, and I really appreciate you asking it. But here's how I would answer it. I think that People's Network for Land and Liberation is one of the most advanced applications of the principles of a solidarity economy. I'm going to take this moment, if I can, to really break it down without dumbing it down. You know, some folks think that, oh, capitalism is so hard, we can't really explain it to ordinary folk. Thandi, I go into elementary schools and I can explain this. Capitalism basically means, number one, the private ownership of the means of production, the factories, the farms, like all the things that it takes, right? Private ownership of the means of production. Number two, that labor itself is just another commodity that's bought and paid for. We believe that labor is sacred, that human activity is something beyond just a commodity. But when you have the private ownership of the means of production and wage labor as a commodity, that is class struggle. You are literally talking about the fact that they are antagonistic against one another. The third thing about capitalism that we have to understand is that the entire apparatus of commerce itself for the capitalist is profit maximization. Like, they really don't think that anybody's going to do anything unless they can extract or exploit from others. The fourth part about the capitalist economic system is the idea of commodity production. In other words, you produce things to sell as commodities, as opposed to what we understand use value. Our ancestors produced things in order to use them. And one of the things every ancestral experience from in everywhere on earth was everybody in the village ate. And if anybody was starving, it meant everybody was starving. But everybody actually had enough food to eat, and there was no such thing as houselessness. Everybody was housed. What I'm getting at is this idea of producing commodities is what creates the scarcity. It's back to what Edget said so brilliantly during the pandemic. The stuff was there, but they couldn't make a profit off of it anymore, right? So this is my point. The solidarity economy framework is an explicitly post-capitalist framework. Now, we think that there are multiple ways to get there in the solidarity economy. So we are pluralistic, but we are absolutely committed to democracy, true economic democracy. We're committed to a sense of pluralism, that there are many different ways to get there. We're committed to real solidarity. We're committed to equity in all dimensions: race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and expression. So what I'm getting at is the solidarity economy is a framework. The People's Network for Land and Liberation are 6 brilliant examples of that happening in local communities. And now we're creating a community of practice where we're sharing with one another. This is what's working here. This is what's not working. How can we figure it out? And how can we support each other? Because I'm going to end it with this. As Edget said, ain't nobody coming for us. Like, it's up to us, ordinary folk, to roll up our sleeves and create the world that we so desperately need and so richly deserve.
I'm speaking with Edget Betru and David Cobb of the People's Network for Land and Liberation, a network of autonomous organizations committed to building communities that regenerate the Earth's life-giving ecosystems, committed to decommodifying the land to reestablish a right relationship with the Earth and all of our relatives and relations. That sounds so wonderful and beautiful. It sounds like a tall order also, a very tall order. So the question of to what end do you seek? To what end? How do we get there? How? Just how? How? What? How?
One day at a time. It's
Good answer.
about experimentation, about going back uh, to the knowledge that our ancestors have passed down to us. In the Black liberation movement, there's been a tradition of um, doing work that's aimed at our immediate survival
Right.
while we are fighting for the better future that is to come. It's always been this, both resistance and building, right?
Plan.
And then that's what this is. This is a continuation of that work. It's, yes, we're going to resist the fascism that we're experiencing right now, the oppression we're experiencing right now. But at the same time, we're going to be building in our local communities. We're going to be developing mutual aid networks that are going to help us provide medical care as Medicaid is getting cut, as women's reproductive rights and access to reproductive services are cut. We are going to grow our own food and create our cooperative grocery stores. We are going to learn how to defend ourselves. We are going to do everything that we need to do to survive. But at the same time, we're going to speak out against the kidnapping of our immigrant brothers and sisters. We're going to stand up for everybody who's being oppressed as we build for the future. So we want to survive, and we want to be able to offer an alternative system that allows people to be their best selves, that doesn't extract from the environment to the point where it's imploding. And that is ultimately we want to be the alternative, and we know that there are so many others doing this kind of work. So we are building our little network, and we want to reach out to all the other folks doing this work. We want to find each other and confederate, because we know we're going to need systems, right? We're going to need a supply chain of all the products that we're going to be producing. So this is not like we have the answer and we are the solution. We are one experiment, and we are both learning from each other within our network. And we want to reach out and connect with others who are similarly aligned in terms of wanting a complete transformation of the systems that we use to provide for our needs.
I want to thank you so much, Edget, because when Edget was talking, it reminds me some of the language that we often will use is we're creating liberated zones, right? And in the 70s and 80s in the anti-colonial struggle, the liberated zones looked a certain kind of way because those were armed struggles, and a section had been liberated and was being governed even before the entire nation had been. But in this day and age, liberated zones look differently, right? So in each one of these nodes, what we're describing is a version of a liberated zone where we're meeting our needs within the existing system. Ultimately, we intend to confederate not just amongst these six, but Thandi, like our experiment only works if we win a new world, right? We don't intend to coexist with white supremacy and settler colonialism and heteropatriarchy and capitalism. It is our intention to be part of a process to dismantle those systems and live into and create the new ones. But we can't just wait, and we can't just jump from the racist, sexist, class oppressive society we live in now and tomorrow have this thing. So this is why Edget's point about our experimentation. All of us enter into this conversation with deep conviction and humility, a recognition that none of us have the answer, but together we do. And together is the only way we're going to win this world.
Well, I was going to ask you, it sounded like you were talking about liberated zones. And I wanted to ask you a right relationship with the land. I'm out here in Los Angeles. It's Tonga land, but I'm in Los Angeles, California, born and raised here, lived here all my life. I'm out here with concrete and asphalt.
how can y'all help me and us in Los Angeles, California? Because we need some help.
Well, here's if I were living in Los Angeles, because I've had the privilege of being out there a number of times, and I know that there are several very successful community land trusts and limited equity housing cooperatives, as an example. So if I were in Los Angeles, what I would try to do is be finding others that had the language that they hear from Edget and myself to say, let's come together, and not in all of Los Angeles, because let's be honest, Los Angeles is a city state. It's not a normal, you know what I'm saying? Like Los Angeles, as a community organizer, I can't even wrap my head around that, right? It's so big. It's so sprawling. It's so populated. But you know what? There are neighborhoods there. So what I would be interested in is getting together in a neighborhood kind of way to say, well, can we experiment on a community garden here, a limited equity housing cooperative here, a art project here, and begin, like, what, as the phrase go, you dig where you stand, right? Like wherever you are is where the work is. And so I recognize that Los Angeles ain't Humboldt County, which is where I live, right? So it's going to look profoundly different. But I would tell you this, y'all got to eat. Y'all got to have a place to live. Y'all got to have art and culture. You got to produce goods and services that the people need. So human needs remain the same. And so Los Angeles would be a profoundly different version of this experiment, but our 5-point program would still be applicable even in Los Angeles.
And tradition of, certainly there's a tradition of community organizing there, from, and so many amazing organizations, from Communities for a Better Environment to the Bus Riders Union to, there that have been engaging in local policy work and municipality based organizing, to there's tons of community gardens and people who've turned vacated lots to places where you can grow food and where community members can come and have the plots where they grow food. So all of these things that we're doing exist already in almost every community. They're just not necessarily coordinated. And I think that as these, the fires happen and the hurricanes happen and the floodings happen, we are forced to come together to just deal with our basic survival. I think more and more you'll see all of these aspects kind of coming together to create a full model of what a solidarity economy can look like in that respective community.
To point out, in a solidarity economy framework, remember pluralism, there's not any one right way, but there are certain policies that the solidarity economy can promote, which are things like public banking, participatory budgeting, universal basic income. And I'm using those 3 examples because I know that in Los Angeles right now, there is a vibrant movement for a municipal public bank to democratize finance and take Wall Street head on. That's an enormous thing that's happening in Los Angeles. There's universal basic income programs in Los Angeles that are proving that it actually works. It makes people's lives better, and it's good use of public money. And participatory budgeting projects where you bring the community together, and instead of just elected officials making the decision for everybody else, you literally create forums and processes. So Edget can say, well, I think we need more childcare. And I say, well, I think we need a new health clinic. And Thandi says, well, wait a minute. These roads are hell out here. And we have to listen to each other and recognize, oh, okay, how are we going to actually do this? Because here's the thing, Thandi, every one of us, like, it depends on what culture you come out of. Some people might use the word democracy. Others will use autonomy. Others will use liberation. But at the end, what we're really talking about is we, the people, are supposed to have the power. We are supposed to govern ourselves. And we all know in this society, a very small predatory class are actually governing us. They are not just exercising power, they are ruling us as surely as kings once ruled their subjects. And here we're saying, ya basta, enough. We've had it. And the ecological collapse and the rising fascism is forcing us to come to terms. We are going to have to create a new society because this one is collapsing.
Edget Betru and David Cobb of the People's Network for Land and Liberation. How can people, the audience, folks, get more information on PNLL? How can they follow y'all? Follow what y'all are doing? Let us know.
Well, one thing is that we are going to have a series of shows featuring each one of our nodes, where you'll get to know what the work actually looks like on the ground, from the people who are doing it. And so stay tuned to Rootwork and to Black Liberation Media, because we are going to have a whole series to go deeper into what we're talking about today. And then you want to take our...
Yeah. So please hit us up on our website, landandliberation.org. There's a place where you can put in your contact information. And here's the thing. If you just put your contact information, cool, you'll get on an email list. But here's the thing. This is my pledge to you. And I mean, you who hears my voice right now, when you type that in, if you say, I'd like to actually have a conversation with somebody, I make it a point to write back to anybody who does that and set up a one-on-one conversation. Because I do believe each one teach one, and we are looking to build relationships with people. We do not believe we have the answer. We have an experiment. We want to learn from you. We want to learn from what your experiment is, and we want to build together. Because at the end of the day, we are going to have to unite and fight. And that means that we have to build a movement that is across race, across gender, across sexual orientation. We have to come to terms with the fact that the predatory class has a plan for us, and it's not it.
Mm-hmm. All right. David Cobb, Edget Betru, thank you so very much for being on Rootwork today.
Thank you, Thandi.
So that was an interview. That was an interview with Edget Betru and David Cobb of the People's Network for Land and Liberation, giving you an introduction to the principles of this network. And as Edget mentioned, we'll be in the coming weeks/month or so, we will be talking with the member organizations of this network about what they're doing specifically in the areas of the country where they are and the communities in which they are. Again, this is a Cooperation Jackson is a part of the People's Network for Land and Liberation, but being a part of the People's Network for Land and Liberation is a part of Cooperation Jackson's build and fight formula for a fundamental transformation of society. This is a way that we believe we can do it. We know we need to do it. It needs to be done. When people ask what is to be done, how do we do these things? There's a saying called, I always forget the way to say it in Spanish, but it's, we make the road by walking. We have theory, we have examples of past work, but sometimes you just got to get out there and try stuff, right? You have an idea, you try it, you see if it works. If it doesn't work, you throw it away. If it does work, you keep it moving. You get a little bit of both, you improve upon it. So these are concrete ways that people are not wringing their hands, that are not paralyzed in their armchairs theorizing about theory, but actually on the ground doing work throughout the country. So we're excited about bringing you this series, introducing you to the work of the People's Network for Land and Liberation, and introducing you to the various organizations that are involved, and providing an opportunity for you all to get involved, either in these actual groups, if they're in your communities, and if not, how you can start an organization and be involved in this type of work. So our brother Kali Akuno is unfortunately not going to be able to join us at right now and give us some more food for thought. We're just going to have to catch up with him next month for the Build and Fight formula around self-defense. If you have not been following that series, which we've been doing on Tuesdays, please go to Black Liberation Media or to Jackson Rising or to Rootwork here on YouTube and look up the Build and Fight formula and catch those previous shows if you have not already caught them. So it is 4:43. We are under 1 hour. Mr. Arthritis is not knocking on the door, but I'm going to get to it before he knocks today, and I'm going to get on out of here. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Please like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. And if you feel so moved, donate to the work that's being done. Hit that Cash App, hit that Venmo. It's right down there in the ticker that's going across the bottom of the screen. If you're not already supporting Black Liberation Media, hit up that Patreon and support Black Liberation Media. All right. So thank you all for viewing. As per usual, you all stay safe out there, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.